Shadow Knight Part 2 by Aaron Dembski Bowden. Stabbing lights lanced through the gloom. The salvage team moved slowly, neither patient nor impatient, but with the confident care of men with an arduous job to do and no deadline to meet. The team spread out across the chamber, overturning debris, examining the markings of weapons fire on the walls, their internal vox clicking as they spoke to one another. With the ship open to the void, each of the salvage team wore atmosphere suits against the airless cold. They communicated as often by sign language as they did by words. This interested the hunter that watched them, because he too was fluent in Astartes battle sign, curious to see his enemies betray themselves so easily. The hunter watched in silence as the spears of illumination cut this way and that, revealing the wreckage of the battles that had taken place on the deck of this abandoned vessel. The salvage team, who were clearly gene-enhanced, but too small and unarmored to be full Astartes, were crippled by the atmosphere suits they wore. Such confinement limited their senses, while the hunter's ancient Mark IV warplate only enhanced his. They could not hear as he heard, nor see as he saw. That reduced their chances of survival from incredibly unlikely to absolutely none. Smiling at the thought, the hunter whispered to the machine spirit of his armor, a single word that enticed the warplate's soul, with the knowledge that the hunt was beginning in earnest. Preysight. His vision blurred to the blue in the deepest oceans, decorated by supernova heat smears of moving living beings. The hunter watched the team move on, separating into two teams, each of two men. This was going to be entertaining. Talos followed the first team, shadowing them through the corridors, knowing the grating purr of his power armor and the snarling of its servo joints were unheard by the sense-dimmed salvagers. Salvagers was perhaps the wrong word, of course. Disrespectful to the foe. While they were not full Adeptus Astartes, their gene enhancement was obvious in the bulk of their bodies and the lethal grace of their motions. They, too, were hunters, just weaker examples of the breed. Initiates. Their icon, mounted on each shoulder plate, displayed a drop of ruby blood, framed by proud angelic wings. The hunter's pale lips curled into another crooked smile. This was unexpected. The Blood Angels had sent in a team of scouts. The Night Lord had little time for notions of coincidence. If the Angels were here, then they were here on the hunt. Perhaps the Covenant of Blood had been detected on the long-range sensors of a Blood Angel battle fleet. Such a discovery would certainly have enough to bring them here, hunting for the precious sword, no doubt, and not for the first time. Perhaps this was their initiation ceremony, a test of prowess. Bring back the blade and earn passage into the chapter. Oh, how unfortunate. The stolen blade hung at the hunter's hip, as it had for years now. Tonight would not be the night it found its way back into the desperate reach of the Angels. But as always, they are welcome to sell their lies at attempt of reclamation. Talos monitored the readout of his retinal displays. The temptation to blink-click certain runes was strong, but he resisted the urge. His hunts would be easy enough without combat narcotics flooding through his body. Purity lay in abstaining from such things until they became necessary. The location runes of his brothers in First Claw flickered on his visor display, taking note of their positions elsewhere in the ship. The hunter moved forward to shed the blood of those enslaved to the throne of lies. A true hunter did not avoid being seen by his prey. Such stalking was the act of cowards and carrion eaters, revealing themselves only when the prey was slain. Where was the skill in that? Where was the thrill? A Night Lord was raised to hunt by other, truer principles. Talos ghosted from the shadows, judging the strengths of the scout suit's audioceptors. Just how much could they hear? He followed them down a corridor, his gauntleted knuckles scraping alongside the metal walls. The Blood Angels turned instantly, stabbing his face with their beam lighting. That almost worked. The hunter had to give it to them. These Leicester hunters knew their prey. They knew they hunted Night Lords. For half a heartbeat, Sunfire would have blazed across his vision, blinding him. Talos ignored the beams completely. He tracked by prey sights. Their tactics were meaningless. He was already gone when they opened fire, melting into the shadows of a wide side corridor. He caught them again 9 minutes later. This time, he lay in wait after baiting a beautiful trap. The sword they came for was right in their path. It was called Aurum. The words barely did its craftsmanship justice. Forged when the Emperor's Great Crusade first took steps into the stars, the blade was forged for one of the Blood Angels Legion's first 8 heroes. It had come into Talos' possession centuries later, when he'd murdered Aurum's heir. It was almost amusing how often the sons of Sanguinius tried to reclaim the sword from him. It was much less amusing how often he had to kill his own brothers when they sought to take the blade from his dead hands. Avarice shattered all unity, even among Levigan brothers. The scouts saw the chapter relic now, so long denied their grasp. The golden blade was embedded into the dark metal decking. Its angel-winged crosspiece turned to ivory under the harsh glare of the stabbing lights. An invitation to simply advance into the chamber and take it, but it was so obviously a trap. Yet, how could they resist? They did not resist. The initiates were alert, bolters high and paneling fast, senses keen. The hunters saw their mouths moving as they voxed continuous updates to each other. Talos let go of the ceiling. He thudded to the deck behind one of the initiates, gauntlets snapping forward to clutch the scouts. The other angel turned and fired. Talos laughed at the zeal in his eyes, the tightness of his clenched teeth, as the initiate fired 3 bolts into the body of his brother. The Night Lord gripped the convulsing human shield against him, seeing the temperature gauge on his retinal display flicker as the dying initiate's blood hit sections of his war plates. In his grip, the shuddering angel was little more than a burst sack of freezing meat. The bolt shells had detonated, coming close to killing him and opening the suit to the void. "Good shooting, Angel," Talos spoke through his helm-crackling vox speakers. He threw his bleeding shield aside and leapt for the other initiate, fingers splayed like talons. The fight was mercilessly brief. The Night Lord's full gene enhancements, coupled with the heightening strength of his armor-engineered muscle fiber cables, meant there was only one possible outcome. Talos backhanded the bolter from the angel's grip and clawed at the initiate. As the weaker warrior writhed, Talos stroked his gauntleted fingertips across the clear face visor of the initiate's atmosphere suit. "This looks fragile," he said. The scout shouted something unheard. Hate burned in his eyes. Talos wasted several seconds enjoying that expression, that passion. He crashed his fist against the visor, smashing it into shards. As one corpse froze and another swelled and ruptured on its way to asphyxiation, the Night Lord retrieved his blade, the sword he claimed by right of conquest, and moved back into the darkest parts of the ship. "Talos!" The voice came over the vox in a sibilant hiss. "Speak with us." "They have sent initiates to hunt us, brother. I had to cancel my prey sight to make sure my eyes were seeing clearly. Initiates against us." "Spare me your indignation. What do you want?" Uzas's reply was a low growl and a crackle of a dead vox. Talos put it from his mind. He had grown long bored of Uzas forever lamenting each time they met with insignificant prey. "Sirion, I, Talos? Of course. Forgive me. I thought it would be Uzas with another rant. I hear your deck are crawling with angels. Epic glories to be earned in slaughtering their infants, eh? Talos didn't quite sigh. Are you almost done? This Hulk is as hollow as Uzas's head brother. Negative on anything of worth. Not even a servitor to steal. I'm returning to the boarding pod now. Unless you need help shooting the angel's children. Talos killed the Voxlink as he stalked through the black corridor. This was fruitless. Time to leave, empty-handed and still desperately short on supplies. This piracy offended him now, as it always did, and it always had since they'd been cut off from the Legion decades ago. A plague upon the long-dead War Master and his failures which still echoed today. A curse upon the night the 8th Legion was shattered and scattered amongst the stars. Diminished, reduced, surviving as disparate war bands. Broken echoes of the unity within loyalist Astartes. Sins of the Father. This curious ambush by the angels had tracked them here was nothing more than a short diversion. Talos was about to vox a general withdrawal after the last initiates were hunted down and slain, when his vox went live again. Brother, said Zarl, I found the angels. As of Uzas and I, kill them quickly and let's get back to the convent. No, Talos. Zarl's voice was edged with anger. Not initiates, the real angels. The Night Lords of the First Claw 10th Company came together like wolves in the wild. Stalking through the darkened chambers of the ship, the four Astartes met in the shadows, speaking over the Voxlink, crouching with their weapons at the ready. In Talos' hands, the relic blade Autumn caught what little light remained, glinting as he moved. 5 of them. Zarl spoke low, his voice edged with suppressed eagerness. We can take 5. They stand bright and proud in a control chamber not far from our boarding pod. He racked his bolter. We can take 5. They're just waiting, Cyron said. They must be expecting an honest fight. Uzas snorted at that. This is your fault, you know, Cyron said with a chuckle, nodding at Talos. You and that damn sword. It keeps things interesting, Talos replied, and I cherish every curse that chapter screams on me. He stopped speaking, narrowing his eyes for a moment. Sarion's skulled helm blurred before him, as did Zarl's. The sound of distant bolter fire echoed in his ears, not distorted by faint crackling of helm filtered noise. Not a true sound, not a real memory, something akin to both. I have... Talos blinked to clear his fading vision. Shadows of vast darkened his sight. I have a blood... brother? Talos shivered once more, his servo joints snarling at the shaking movement. Magnetically clasped to his thigh, his bolter didn't fall to the deck link, but the golden blade did. It clattered to the steel floor with a clang. Talos! No, not now, Uzas growled. Talos' head jerked once more, as if his armor had sent an electrical pulse through his spine, and he crashed to the ground and clashed with warplate on metal. The gold machines of Krythe, he muttered. They have killed the sun. A moment later, he started to scream. The others had to cut Talos out of the squad's internal Voxlink. His screams drowned out all other speech. We can take 5 of them, Zarl said. 3 of us remain. We can take 5 angels. Almost certainly, Cyron agreed. And if they summon squads of their initiates, then we slaughter 5 of them and their initiates. Uzas cut in. We were slaying our ways across the stars 10,000 years ago before they were even born. Yes, well, that's a wonderful parable. I don't need rousing rhetoric, Sauron said. I need a plan. We hunt, Uzas and Zarl said at once. We kill them. We feast on their gene seed. If this was an award ceremony for fervency and zeal, once again, you'd both be collapsing under the weight of metals. But you want to launch an assault on their position while we drag Talos with us? I think the scraping of his armor would rather kill the element of stealth, brothers. Guard him, Sairon, Zarl said. Uzas and I will take the angels. 2 against 5. Sairon's right eye lenses didn't quite fix upon his brothers. Those are poor odds, Zarl. Then we finally be rid of each other, Zarl grunted. Besides, we've had worse. That was true, at least. Ave Dominis Nox, Sairon said. Hunt well and hunt fast. Ave Dominis Nox, the other 2 replied. Sairon listened for a while to his brother's screams. It was difficult to make sense from the stream of shouted words. This came as no surprise. Sairon had heard Talos suffering in the grip of his afflictions many times before. As gene gifts went, it was rarely a blessing. Sins of the father, he thought, watching Talos' inert armor, listening to the cries of death to come, how they are reflected within the sun. According to Sairon's retinal chrono display, 1 hour and 16 minutes passed when he heard the explosion. The decking shuddered under his boots. Zarl? Uzas? Static was the only answer. Great. When Uzas's voice finally broke over the vox after 2 hours, it was weak and colored by his characteristic bitterness. Sairon, it's done. Drag the prophets. You sound like you got shot. Sairon resisted the urge to smile in case they heard it in his words. He did, Zarl said. We're on our way back. What was that detonation? Plasma cannon. You're joking. Not even 1 second. I have no idea why they brought one of those to a fight in the ship's innards, but the coolant feed's made for a right target. Sairon blink-clicked a rune by Zarl's identification symbol. It opened a private channel between the 2 of them. Huit Uzas, an initiate, from behind with a sniper rifle. Sirion immediately closed the link so no one would hear him laughing. The Covenant of Blood was a blade of cobalt darkness, bronze-edged and scarred by centuries of battle. It drifted through the void, sailing close to its prey like a shark gliding through black waters. The incoming Soul was a Gladius-class frigate with a long and proud history of victories in the name of the Blood Angels chapter. And before it, insert number legion. It opened fire on the Covenant of Blood with an admirable array of weapon batteries. Briefly and beautifully, the void shields around the Night Lord strike cruiser shimmered in display, reminiscent of oil on water. The Covenant of Blood returned fire. Within a minute, the blade-like ship was sailing through the void debris, its lances cooling from their momentary fury. The incoming souls, what little chunks of it were left, clanged and sparked off the larger cruiser's void shields as it passed through the expanding cloud of wreckage. Another ship, this one stricken and dead in space, soon fell under the Covenant's shadow. That strike cruiser obscured the sun, pulling in close, ready to receive its boarding pod once again. First Claw had been away for 7 hours investigating the Hulk. Their mothership had come hunting for them. Bulkhead seals hissed as the reinforced doors opened loud on grinding hinges. Zarl and Sirion carried Talos into the Covenant's deployment bay. Uzas walked behind them, a staggering limp marring his gait. His spine was on fire from the sniper's solid slug that still lodged in there, whereas his gene-enhanced healing had sealed and clotted the wound. He needed surgery, or more likely a knife and a mirror to tear the darn thing out. One of the Atramentar, elite guard of the Exalted, stood in its hulking Terminator warplate. His skull-painted tusked helm stared impassively. Trophy racks adorned his back, each one impaled with several helms from a number of Loyalist Scottish chapters. A history of bloodshed and betrayal, proudly displayed for his brothers to see. It nodded to Talos's prone form. "The Soul Hunter is wounded?" The Terminator asked, its voice a deep rumbling growl. "No," Sauron growled. "Inform the Exalted at once. His prophet is suffering another vision."